My beloved child, stop for a moment, because the place connected to your next chapter may be completely different from what you have been imagining. You may have been thinking about a normal job, a familiar company, or simply something that pays the bills, but there is a much deeper story unfolding around your soulmate and the work environment that could bring you closer together. And the most surprising part is this: the opportunity may not arrive looking like the opportunity you expected. It may begin with a message, an unexpected conversation, a recommendation, a vacancy you almost ignore, or even a person mentioning a workplace you never considered before. But listen carefully, because this is where the story becomes impossible to ignore. Your soulmate may already be connected to the world you are about to enter. Not necessarily as your boss, not necessarily as your coworker, and not necessarily in the obvious way you are imagining. There could be a hidden connection between the career path opening in front of you and the person your heart has been waiting to understand. And when you finally discover where this job is leading you, you may look back at every previous rejection, delay, confusing interview, and unexpected change and realize that your journey was never as random as it felt. Something about this workplace is going to feel strangely familiar, almost as if you have stepped into a chapter that was waiting for you before you even knew its name. But do not rush past this moment, because the location itself is not even the biggest revelation. The bigger revelation is who may be connected to it. Here is the part that makes this story even more intriguing: your soulmate may have a connection to this workplace that you currently know nothing about. Perhaps they once worked there, know someone there, visit that area regularly, or have a close friend who is already connected to the environment you are moving toward. Imagine receiving an opportunity and thinking, "This is just another job," only to discover weeks later that one person inside that organization somehow knows your soulmate. Suddenly, an ordinary workplace becomes the setting for an extraordinary meeting. And there is another possibility that changes everything. Your soulmate may not enter your life through a dramatic introduction at all. They could appear through something incredibly simple: a shared lunch location, a nearby cafe, a mutual professional contact, a company event, a training session, an online work connection, or a casual conversation after your working day ends. That is why the title of this story matters so much. The question is not simply, "Where are you about to work?" The real question is, why does this particular workplace keep appearing in the path of your soulmate story? You might even be surprised by the type of environment involved. It could be a large organization where thousands of people move through the same doors every day, a smaller office where everyone seems to know everyone, a rapidly growing company, a creative workplace, a customer-facing environment, or a completely new professional field you never imagined yourself entering. And if you have recently been feeling that your career direction is changing, pay attention to the opportunities that seem slightly outside your usual expectations. Sometimes the biggest turning point in a love story begins with something that does not look romantic at all. A job application. A phone call. A new schedule. A different building. A new routine. One small professional decision can place two people on the same path without either person realizing what is happening. But there is one detail you need to hear before this story moves forward, because this is where the emotional side becomes powerful. Your soulmate may recognize something about your new life before you recognize it yourself. They may notice that you are becoming more confident, more focused, more independent, or simply more comfortable with who you are. And that transformation could change the way they see you. Maybe they have known an older version of you. The version that was uncertain, waiting, overthinking, or wondering whether life would finally move forward. Now imagine them hearing that you have started working somewhere new. At first, they may act casual. They may pretend it means nothing. But internally, the information could make them curious. Where is this place? What are you doing there? Who are you meeting? What has changed about you? And then comes the detail you were never expecting. The workplace may become the bridge between your separate worlds. You could be introduced through a person neither of you expected. You could cross paths because your schedules suddenly overlap. You could find yourself attending the same event, visiting the same location, or being placed in the same professional circle. The meeting does not have to happen instantly for the story to matter. In fact, the slow build may be what makes it unforgettable. First comes the job. Then comes the new routine. Then comes the unfamiliar name. Then comes the strange coincidence. And finally, one day, you realize that the person you have been hearing about is connected to the person you have been thinking about all along. That is the kind of revelation that can make an ordinary Tuesday feel like the beginning of an entirely different life. And now, before you decide that this is simply another story about finding a new job, remember the question at the center of everything. Where are you actually about to work, and why could that place matter to your soulmate story? The answer may be closer to your everyday world than you expect. It could be somewhere you have already passed without giving it a second thought. Somewhere you may have visited before. Somewhere connected to a friend, a relative, an old professional contact, or even a routine you are about to change. The fascinating part is that you may not recognize the significance immediately. You may simply see a new opportunity and think, let me try. But months from now, you could remember that exact decision and realize it changed far more than your career. It changed your environment. It changed the people around you. It changed your daily rhythm. And most importantly, it created a new doorway through which your soulmate story could develop naturally. So when the opportunity appears, do not judge it only by the title on the job description. Look at the environment, the people, the location, the connections, and the unexpected doors surrounding it. Because the biggest surprise may not be getting hired. The biggest surprise may be discovering that the place you are about to work is connected to a person you thought was still far away from your life. And when that connection finally becomes visible, you may understand why this opportunity felt different from the beginning. Something about this opportunity is about to become much more personal than you expected, because the next clue may not come from the job itself, it may come from the person connected to it. Your soulmate could already be closer to this professional circle than you realize, and that is why the next stage of your journey may feel strangely familiar. You may hear a name repeatedly, notice the same company appearing in different places, or encounter an opportunity through someone who seems completely unrelated to your love life. At first, you may dismiss it as coincidence. But then another connection appears. Someone mentions the same workplace. Another person talks about the same area. A message arrives at precisely the moment you were thinking about changing direction. Suddenly, what looked like an ordinary career decision starts carrying an entirely different feeling. And here is where the story takes a turn. your soulmate may have been quietly watching your growth from a distance. They may not know every detail about what you are doing, but they can sense that something has shifted. You are becoming harder to overlook. You are building yourself again. You are entering an environment where new people can see qualities in you that others may have taken for granted. Your confidence, your discipline, your ability to handle responsibility, even the way you speak about your future may begin to change. And when your soulmate eventually encounters this version of you, the reaction may be completely different from anything you expected. They may realize that the person they once thought they understood has evolved. That realization can create curiosity, admiration, and an emotional pull that becomes harder to ignore. The workplace, therefore, may not simply be where you earn your next paycheck. It may become the environment where your soulmate finally sees the version of you that has been developing quietly behind the scenes. Now picture the moment when the connection finally becomes obvious. You are settling into your new routine, learning names, understanding responsibilities, and getting comfortable with the environment. Then someone casually says something that catches your attention. Maybe they mention a person you know. Maybe they refer to an event your soulmate attended. Maybe they tell you about someone who has a connection to the same place. You listen without thinking much of it. Then another detail appears, and suddenly your mind starts connecting the pieces. This is where the emotional tension rises, because you may realize that your soulmate has been closer to this new chapter than you ever imagined. And the most unexpected part could be that they are not introduced to you immediately. Instead, there may be a period where both of you are moving around the same wider circle without realizing how close the paths are becoming. One person may be hearing about you while you are hearing about them. Someone may mention your name to your soulmate. Someone may mention their name to you. Neither conversation seems important at the time, but later, both conversations become pieces of the same story. That slow build-up can make the eventual encounter feel much more powerful. You are not meeting as two complete strangers dropped into the same room. You are meeting after your worlds have quietly been moving toward the same point. And when that first real interaction happens, watch for the smallest details. The pause before they speak, the unexpected smile, the way their attention stays on you slightly longer than normal, or the sudden feeling that this person is somehow familiar even though the situation is completely new. Sometimes the most memorable beginnings are not loud. They are subtle. They happen in ordinary moments that only become extraordinary after you understand what they meant. And there is another reason this opportunity may matter. It could place you in a position where you finally stop chasing what was never meant to stay and start building something that feels stable. Your soulmate story is not supposed to be only about waiting for another person. It is also about becoming the person who is ready for a healthier chapter. This new work environment could introduce structure into your life. It could give you new responsibilities, new conversations, new ambitions, and a stronger sense of direction. And ironically, that may be exactly when your soulmate connection becomes more noticeable. Because when you stop making your entire emotional world revolve around whether someone will return, something changes. You begin living again. You begin planning again. You begin becoming excited about your own future. And that energy can transform the way another person experiences you. Your soulmate may notice that you are no longer standing still. They may hear that you have started something new. They may discover that you are working somewhere unexpected. They may even become curious about the people and experiences surrounding your new chapter. This is why the workplace itself is only one piece of the revelation. The bigger story is the version of you that emerges there. You may walk into that place thinking you are simply beginning a job, but you could walk out of the experience with a completely different understanding of your value. And somewhere along that journey, your soulmate may realize something they once failed to recognize: you were never waiting for life to begin. You were becoming ready for it. The most important clue may arrive when you least expect it, because the final connection could involve a person you would never initially associate with your soulmate. A coworker. A manager. A client. A friend of a friend. Someone from another department. Someone who lives nearby. Someone who has absolutely no idea that their simple introduction could change two people's lives. That is how unexpected this chapter may feel. You could accept the job because of the salary, the experience, the location, or simply because you need a fresh beginning. But then one ordinary interaction opens another door. A conversation leads to a name. A name leads to a connection. A connection leads to an introduction. And suddenly, the question is no longer, where am I going to work? It becomes, how did this place bring me here? That is the moment the entire story starts making sense. The job was not necessarily the destination. It was the setting. The new workplace was the environment where your life could expand enough for an unexpected connection to become possible. And if your soulmate enters this chapter, the most powerful part may be that neither of you has to force it. You will simply find yourself standing in the same circle, sharing the same conversation, or discovering that someone you already know has been connected to them all along. So when that opportunity appears, pay attention not only to the position, but to the people surrounding it. Pay attention to the location. Pay attention to the connections. Because the surprising answer to where you are about to work may eventually lead to an even bigger question. Who is waiting somewhere inside the wider world that this new job is about to open for you? My beloved child, the next piece of this story begins with a detail you may not recognize as important at first. You could be walking into this new professional chapter expecting nothing more than a fresh routine, yet somewhere inside that routine, something about your soulmate connection may begin shifting. Perhaps the workplace is farther from home than you expected, or perhaps it is surprisingly close. Perhaps you applied because the position looked ordinary, but the people you meet there are anything but ordinary. You may discover that someone in your new environment knows your soulmate, has worked with them before, studied with them, lives near them, or belongs to the same wider social circle. And that is where the suspense begins, because you may not learn this immediately. First, you settle in. You learn the systems. You become familiar with the faces. You start understanding who talks to whom and which people seem to know everyone. Then one day, almost casually, a conversation takes a turn. A name is mentioned. You hear something that sounds familiar. You ask one innocent question, and suddenly the atmosphere changes inside your own mind. You realize that this person knows someone connected to your soulmate. And now you cannot help wondering how many times your paths may have already crossed without either of you realizing it. Your soulmate could be closer to your professional world than you thought, but the real surprise is what happens when they hear about you. Imagine someone mentioning that a new person has joined the team, and your soulmate recognizing your name. Imagine them becoming quiet for a second because they were not expecting to hear it there. Imagine them asking one simple question. Wait, which person? That tiny moment could become the beginning of something neither of you planned. Then comes the part you may never see coming. Your soulmate could start becoming curious about the life you are building in this new environment. Not because someone tells them some dramatic story, but because small pieces of information begin reaching them naturally. They may hear that you started working somewhere new. They may learn that you have taken on more responsibility. They may hear that you seem happier, more focused, or more confident than before. And something inside them begins to shift. They may have assumed that you were still the same person they remembered, still standing exactly where they last saw you emotionally. But now they hear that you are moving forward. You are creating a routine. You are meeting new people. You are building a professional identity. You are becoming increasingly comfortable in your own world. That can create a strange emotional realization for someone who still carries unfinished feelings. They may suddenly understand that your life is not paused while they figure out what they want. Your world is continuing. And that realization may make them look at your connection differently. They may begin remembering conversations they once ignored, moments they once misunderstood, and little things about you that suddenly feel much more meaningful. Perhaps they remember the way you supported them when you did not have to. Perhaps they remember your patience. Perhaps they remember the way you looked at them during a conversation they thought was ordinary. The new job does not magically create those memories. It simply gives them a reason to revisit them. And that is why your career chapter may become strangely connected to your soulmate chapter. You are changing your surroundings, and that change can make someone from your past, or someone unexpectedly connected to your future, see you through completely different eyes. But there is a deeper twist waiting here, because the workplace you are entering may challenge your expectations in another way. You may initially believe that the opportunity is too ordinary, too unexpected, or even slightly outside your original plan. You might wonder whether you should accept it. You might compare it with another option. You might question whether the location is right, whether the schedule fits, or whether this is really the direction you want. And that hesitation could become one of the most important moments in the entire story. Because sometimes the decision that looks small from the outside changes the entire sequence of what happens next. One decision changes your routine. Your routine changes who you encounter. Who you encounter changes which conversations become possible. And those conversations can eventually lead you toward people you never expected to meet. That is why this story is not really about predicting a company name or putting an exact address on your future. It is about recognizing the strange way one professional decision can rearrange your social world. You may enter this job for practical reasons and discover emotional consequences you never planned for. Maybe the workplace gives you confidence. Maybe it introduces you to a new circle. Maybe it takes you to a part of town you rarely visit. Maybe it connects you with someone who casually says, "You know who else works around here?" And suddenly, your attention changes. Your heart starts racing, not because you have proof of anything, but because one familiar name has appeared inside a completely unfamiliar chapter. And that is when you begin to understand why this opportunity felt different even before you accepted it. The biggest revelation, however, may be waiting beyond the job itself. Your soulmate may not be the person sitting across from you on your first day, and they may not walk through your office door in some dramatic movie-like moment. Instead, this new workplace may create a chain of events that eventually puts you in the same place at the same time. A colleague may invite you somewhere. A professional event may bring different circles together. A new project may involve people outside your normal department. A routine coffee stop may become familiar. A simple commute may place you beside someone you have never spoken to before. And one of these ordinary moments could contain the first real connection. That is what makes this chapter so compelling. You may be looking for the answer in the job title, while the real answer is hidden inside the network of people and places surrounding that job. Your soulmate story may be approaching through a door that does not look romantic at all. It may look like an application form, an interview, an onboarding message, a new ID card, a different desk, or your first morning walking into an unfamiliar building. And when you eventually understand the connection, you may remember this exact period and realize something astonishing: you were not simply searching for work. You were entering an environment that gave your life new direction and opened possibilities you could not have planned yourself. So keep listening, because the next part of this story reveals the detail that could make the workplace connection feel even more personal. The one clue that could make you suddenly wonder whether your soulmate has already heard about this new chapter before you even realize